Radiant Dawn picks up about 3 years after the conclusion of Path of Radiance for the GameCube. Where Path of Radiance ended, you get a pretty complete sense of like the closure of the storyline, but this game picks up a number of threads that were left a little open at the end. You start off in the country of Dan, which is, for fans of the series, for people who played Path of Radiance, they'll know that's where the evil King Ashnard came from, and they were the villains in the previous series, but now you're getting a very different take on them in Radiant Dawn. You start off in Dan as the oppressed people of that country, who have been pretty much run into the ground by the Benyon Empire, who essentially won the last game. So already fans of the series are going to see something very different the first time they pick it up. They're going to notice that they're playing in the country that they had really worked hard to defeat last time around. So in addition to making sure that the storyline, after it was translated and after it was rewritten, fit all of those previous story elements from Path of Radiance, we also had to make sure that we maintained consistent characterization with the previous game, and then we had a huge team of writers this time around too. And when you have a huge team of writers, you have a huge problem with maintaining consistent voice, and so there was this fantastic effort on everyone's part to try and bring all of the writing styles together. And of course that vision all comes from Intelligent Systems. It's their game, it's their story, and all we're doing is helping to convey that. The very first Fire Emblem game in the US came out on the Game Boy Advance, and that was shortly after Roy and Marth made their appearance in Smash Bros. Melee. The series has had just a huge fan base in the US of people who've played the import versions, then were introduced to the series through Smash Brothers, suddenly wanted to know, what is this Fire Emblem thing? What is this game that we've been missing out on for all these years? Radiant Dawn does a great job of picking up the strategy elements from Path of Radiance and building on all of those features. The weapons triangle, for people not familiar with it, is the basic rock, paper, scissors relationship that the weapons all have to one another. Radiant Dawn builds on that by adding another level to the weapons triangle. We now have the Trinity of Magic that has appeared in previous Fire Emblem games, making a return here. On top of that, they've added a new feature that I think is it's a subtle but fantastic strategic element that height can make a difference on the battlefield now. So if you have an altitude difference with your opponents, you can be firing arrows down on them and they can't do anything about it. It really influences the way they're going to approach a battle. Radiant Dawn on the Wii features a number of things that we simply couldn't have done on the GameCube. For one thing, the US version of Radiant Dawn features 16:9 widescreen. On top of that, there are more rendered movies, more of the pre-rendered animated cutscenes, more voices in those cutscenes, and we've maintained the voice to narration sequences. What makes Fire Emblem such a strong game for me is the customization element. It's not just a matter of picking your units on the battlefield. You pick your units based on what strategy you want to implement, but you also pick your units based on characters that you like, characters that have a role that you think is significant to the storyline. Instead of having preset support relationships that you can build up on the battlefield, you now can customize all of your support relationships. And they've also expanded, Intelligent Systems has also expanded the number of skills that you can assign for all of your characters, so that you now have even more power over how your characters evolve and how they develop, based on what skills you want to give them, what weapons you want to give them, and how you want to support them on the battlefield. With the announcement that Ike from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance is going to be in Smash Brothers, I think that excitement for Radiant Dawn is going to build in the same way that Roy and Marth in Smash Bros. Melee did. While the game is going to be very accessible for newcomers, both from a story level and from a gameplay level, there are enough nuggets of hidden wisdom in the storyline and enough strategic nuances in the gameplay that people who loved Path of Radiance, they're going to have a great time just exploring those elements and discovering what's new about the series and discovering how what they knew from the past game has changed because of what they're discovering in this new game. We're really hoping that people who played Path of Radiance will be intrigued enough by the storyline to pick up Radiant Dawn, because the game completes that story. But more than anything, we're hoping that people who've never touched a Fire Emblem before are going to pick up Radiant Dawn as well. Radiant Dawn does a great job of distilling all of the core qualities of the Fire Emblem franchise into a single title. There's strong story, there are strong characters, there are complex relationships. It just makes it the perfect refinement, so far, of the Fire Emblem series. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn comes out November 5th, 2007, exclusively for the Nintendo Wii.